Hey everybody, welcome to the Dev Talk Show. Got Andy here. How's it going, Andy? And
It's going all right. Going all
yeah,
right. Yeah.
awesome.
Another day in a dream.
Living the dream. That's right. Just a couple days before Halloween, especially for I still got a little trick or treater. So it's October 27th of 2021, and we're here getting started a few minutes late, but thanks for joining us. We've already had some people check in the chat. I think Darksider checked in, right? And it's
Dark, dark.
did I get the name wrong? Dark Rider, Darksider,
Oh, Elder.
Dark Elder. That's
Eldar.
right. I'm sorry. You know what happens is I got to double check to turn the fours and threes back into the correct letters, right?
It's-
It, it's not really that tricky, except like for some reason live, like your brain kind of goes dur and what did everybody say? But anyways, thanks for being here. It's good to see you again, and it's a Dev Talk Show with Andy Schwam and Chris Gomez, and we don't have Rich tonight, um, but he'll be back.
and unlike some other previous shows where I think there was maybe it was last week or Rich was running late. He's not running late. He's not with us tonight. So
Yeah,
it's if you're here, you're stuck with the two of us. And and Richard Wysocki asking the $1 million question, the question that Chris and I have very recently asked each other. What is
yeah,
tonight's topic?
yeah. And so I think we have. I think it says that there's news and code. So there's a couple
Yeah.
things we did want to discuss that are in the news, right? Uh, I don't know if they're super exciting, but they're exciting to someone like me because we've done a few shows that are centered around development tools, like lightweight development tools. We had a whole show about doing all your development in the browser, and then I think we had another one where I kind of talked about some of the work I like to do, promoting, uh, teaching high schoolers, middle schoolers how to code, and you know, all of the well, I shouldn't say all, but there are a lot of our students here in the United States and perhaps around the world who now have Chromebooks, um, because a lot of them were issued last year, right? So it's cool to have solutions that run in the browser, and I think we have more and better solutions than ever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so we're going to talk about some stuff, but also, Chris, I was thinking, just throwing this out. I mean, it could also be viewers' choice on questions and answers and conversation as well, right? Tonight,
Oh
and
yeah,
tonight.
absolutely. We would love to answer questions. We'd love to know what people are interested in talking about. We have some folks joining us here live on Twitch. And again, if you are watching either on Twitch or YouTube, go ahead. You can use the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. But if you're just hanging out, that's great too. We're glad you're here. There's no pressure to join any particular way. We're just really happy that you're joining us. And then if you're watching in the future on youtube.com, where all of our replays are at youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show, leave us a comment down below, and we're happy to read what people think about the show. So the latest develop it all in the browser tool is here. Maybe not the latest, but certainly the blog post from the team was October 20th, so that's only a week ago. And I don't know if you want to bring it up, Andy. I can, you can, doesn't matter.
Yeah, you want to share my screen here?
And it's super easy to launch, right?
Look at that. Well, first I got to share my screen. So if I share my screen,
Okay.
uh,
I'm
and then
not,
I'm
I haven't moved over
just,
to it. I was waiting to see it come up.
that's fine.
There it
Let me
is. I
see.
see it.
Well, that's my browser. That's not
Yep.
the. Oops, I don't want to show
So
that.
if you get a blank browser, we'll get to see the
Okay.
latest all in the browser tool that I know of, but it's an old friend of ours as well. And super easy to get to.
Right, this is exciting. This,
All
and
right.
you could
You
share
ready? Here we
screen
go.
now.
And all you have to
All
do is
right.
type.
This in my beautiful browser, and I'm just going to go to vscode.dev.
Yep.
Oh, and I don't have Zoom on, but this is vscode.dev, and I'll even type it into the vscode.dev in the chat. Okay. And if I go to this site, up comes VS Code.
Yeah.
Well, in a minute or so. Here, look at that. Does that look familiar?
Yeah. Isn't that? It's pretty cool. Certainly, I've liked to talk about code spaces, in your browser, but that's backed by a virtual machine that I guess is running somewhere in the GitHub universe. There's other tools we've used before on this show. We've used Repl, we've used Code Sandbox, also powered, running in your browser, but also the server that you're working with is powered by some VM. This is 100% in your browser, and I'm not 100% sure everything that works in here. But when I know we're not seeing this on your screen, but I have it running as well. And what's really interesting to me is if I scroll down the left-hand side, the live share is listed as an extension. I'm going to go ahead and install it real quick. And it just seemed to say, okay, fine.
Something here, because as you were talking, I decided to check something out. Now,
okay, go ahead.
You can see this.
Oh, look at that, right. On your phone.
Yeah. My phone. And I wanted to see if it would work. Now, it certainly loads. So on Twitch, Bruno says, "Oh, now you can code on an Xbox, right?" Well, I'm thinking, can I? Oh, it timed out. Yeah, my screen timed out. I didn't realize it. But can I now code on my phone? And I think the answer is possibly. I'm sort of optimistic about that. Now, yeah, I was just about to say. So, Chris, I installed this before the show. No, I did not install this before the show.
Yep.
I went to it once. There's no install.
Right.
But Chris was talking about. So what do you get with VS Code? Well, okay, I've got a text editor, right, and I can go in here and I can do a new file. And usually down here you can choose languages, and as language, yeah, sure, I can choose languages. However, when you look at compiling things, you need more than just the file type here, I think, and this is where things get maybe interesting, or if that's the right word. But I'm curious to know, if I do something, if I go to a C# thing and I type in my keyboard isn't working. That's interesting. Why isn't my keyboard? Let's go to that again.
Can you hit Control plus a couple times just so we get a nice view of this?
Oh, yeah, sure. No, I just, for some reason, it's not even... All right, let's just see if I can... Yeah, okay, now it's working. So I wonder what will happen. So if I do like public class foo... Okay, look at that. So I'm getting highlighting, or whatever you want to call it, syntax highlighting and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. But so I can do some things to this code here, but if I go to extensions, and I did try an extension before, if I go to like C# extensions, well, a lot of these extensions are not available for VS Code on the web. So, but I don't know if that means we're throwing this out yet. Like, this is still really interesting. I think there's a lot to sort of figure out, like what we can do and what we can't do here, right?
Right.
But I can open these files and I can edit these files in here, right? And maybe I can't compile them here.
I don't know that you could with C#. If I go to the blog post, there is a blog post for this, which I'll go ahead and share in our chats, and then make sure is included with the show notes, right? But
right.
One of the things that it says is it kind of says here's what's enabled today.
Yeah,
right?
I've got the blog post here. I'm sharing my screen. Want me to bring up? Oh, not that. Let me bring up the blog post, because if you want to scroll through it, I'll be happy to do that.
I think after you get,
let me just.
after you get past the first where it says local development with cloud tools, there's a little bulleted list of things that would work in here. Like for example, Python and C Sharp. You know, like Dark Elder says, is Python would require code spaces. That's I think that's probably true. Or just, you know, on your own local machine or something like that. But what they do is they're using a very modern file system access API where basically you as the user give them permission to use your local file system. So have we now come full circle with the web? Like when the web was new, browsers would, whether they should have or not, people were writing scripts to reach into your file system, so we had to sandbox that out of browsers so that you couldn't access the local file system in a browser. And now we have come all the way around full circle to where, at least if you ask me nicely, you can now write to my file system again.
Right.
So,
I do have this. Yeah, I was just looking to see if what it says. I just searched in here for C Sharp just to see if there was anything, specific about.
no, they've got this bullet pointed list where they say, hey, you could build a client side application, HTML, JavaScript, CSS.
And you can, and that you can do pretty well.
Which makes sense.
And a lot of people. Let's be clear here. Like I'm a .NET guy, right? But a lot of people use VS Code for a lot of things, including an awful lot of JavaScript work that gets done in VS Code. And so before we like sort of poo-poo and say, well, this isn't, if I can't do my language of choice, then this isn't valuable. Well, I don't think that's actually the case. I think there's an awful lot of people that use it as an HTML editor, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript, if that will work in here, things like that. One thing, of course, you notice I'm thinking about this is there is not a terminal. At least I haven't found terminal yet.
So if you hit Control tilde, that's a shortcut to bring up the terminal, and it's going to tell you terminals are not available.
Okay, but see,
in the web
terminals
editor.
Are not
right.
available, right?
Yep.
So that means I can't go here, even if I did have a way to install a language thing. I can't go in here and use a command and say I want to build a project or something like that, right? So, but you do get syntax highlighting, and so if I wanted to open a project, I think I could open my files. I could do certain things to projects of mine, right? But and you can see that. So I was thinking about these extensions. Some of these extensions are sort of marked as not available. Some of them are. I guess this C# snippets code doesn't really matter. So you can have extensions. I was also trying to figure out how does it know which extensions you have, but I guess it's probably somewhere in the browser tools you could see what it's probably doing. It's probably using like local storage or something like that, right?
Yeah. So I started a live share session, and I put the link in the Twitch chat. I made it read only. I'm not sure if I would have been able to also get like I wonder if I can get a not read only link.
So you're saying I could join? Wait, that's not the right link. You pasted the blog post.
Oh, you're right about that. It said that it was. I'm sorry about that. Let me try that again.
And we do have a question in the chat about possibly getting some opinions on how to improve a project that I've been working on from Hiltz Polar. And maybe we can talk about that in a while. Let's see. We're in the middle of something here now, but maybe I'll come back to that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I was just trying to figure out how do I get the copy collaboration link. So I goofed there. Oops. Try this. That looks more like a collaboration link, right?
Yeah. So now if I click that.
But now you gotta, I don't know if it's gonna make you install live share. That's the thing. It might not though, because look at this link itself wants to open vscode.dev. I don't know what's gonna happen when you click on that.
I'm giving a link right here on my screen. All right.
Yeah.
And it's going to, I guess, a new instance of vscode.dev, right? Because it refreshes it. And what do I have in here? I don't have anything yet. Oh, wait. Sign in with VS Live Share to join a collaboration session. And I can continue as anonymous.
Sure.
Does that mean I wouldn't join?
I think what would happen is I wouldn't basically be able to see it's you, but since this is a read-only session, you're only going to see what I type anyway. I didn't make it a session that we could, I don't think I did anyway, that we could participate in, but...
So we can't, there's nothing to do then? I shouldn't join this?
No, you can watch me code.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So I am joining the collaboration session. Look at this. This is interesting. So now but you're doing this from
vscode.dev. I did it from the browser.
Oh, you are doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now look at that. That did not work. I don't know. I'm not sure that worked.
Got the same error when trying to
Yeah.
join
Locus says trying to join anonymously. Same error. So I signed in. Loca tried to do it anonymously, so we're getting that same error. And this is probably a preview. This code this VS Code thing is, right? Is this a preview?
I'm not sure how it's being characterized in the post. I suppose a lot of times they do that, right?
Yeah. So Richard Wysocki asks the question, and I think this is what we were leading into with this for one of the events. Because let's also be clear, right? I've got my laptop that I'm carrying around with me, and I have VS Code installed, right? So that scenario, this doesn't help me, right? But I'm not being negative. I'm just saying that's not a scenario that I need, right? But we have other people that are on maybe a Chromebook or something like that. This is such a great use case here, right, Chris?
Yep. I'm not. Oh, is it loading for Bruno? Cool. And I mean, I just have I suppose it'd be more exciting if it worked for Andy.
Yeah, I could try.
If you type now, do you have the live share? Oh, you do. You're signed in. Can you say like join session or something? If you go to Control-Shift-P to bring up the menu.
I have live share here. It's a start a session. I don't want to start a session. I don't want to do that. So what are you thinking? I can do what?
So do Control-Shift-P, and you should get the command palette. And then if you start typing live, just type live so you get the. You probably want to stop or hit join collaboration session maybe. I don't know if it's going to make you stop yours first, but the bottom in your menu right now says join collaboration session, and what I don't know is it's going to say.
I wouldn't know what.
I don't know if it's going to ask you after you give it permission up there to do some things, because the browser is asking you for some permissions right now in the upper left.
It's trying to get me to.
And there it goes. Is that the link I gave you? No. So, because mine starts with like C20.
And for viewers, right, we're just winging it here.
Oh yeah, we're trying this stuff out live.
Let's try this again. If I do, I'm going to try this again. So I don't know why it's giving me this URL here.
I don't know. But if you put in the one from the chat and hit enter, what does it do?
It means join, like it's saying start, like it's not join an existing one. It's like I'm going to create one. But let me take this comment, the chat.
Let's see if it shows me who's in.
Okay, now C20, this should work, right?
Supposedly.
Nope.
No, not working for you. Okay, well.
In.
Yeah. So not as exciting, because it would have been cool to see like, hey, I'm typing some code or whatever. So code spaces, we're getting some good feedback here in our chat today. Like for example, Richard Wysocki says, so I haven't seen code spaces, and we've done code spaces on a show, and that can run from your browser. It isn't required to run from your browser. When you start a code space, essentially some VM is being launched somewhere, and your machine connects to it either in the browser, or you can use VS Code for it, or this might still be in a private preview. I don't remember. You can use Visual Studio, and the plan is that eventually you'd be able to use all of these environments. Certainly code spaces, has it's as you're pointing out there, Richard, it isn't, I don't think it's a free service, or if there's a free tier or anything like that. So as far as this though, so what is vscode.dev? It's really just the editor brought up in your browser. Are we at the point where we're compiling, .NET or Python? No. I think there would be no reason why, like if I switch over to my screen, if you don't have to turn off your screen share just for a second, but I can share over there. So
can't share?
I'd be able to share. Like I've already got my screen up on the stream, but I can share to you because I know it's definitely easier than you watching the stream, right?
Yeah.
So
share it, just that would be easier.
Yeah. So then let me make this a little bit bigger. So if I'm doing something totally client side, like HTML.
It's my screen, I think.
Oh, I didn't transition it over. That's right. There we go. So now this is mine, and I am also in vscode.dev and just purely in the browser. And if I was doing something that's just browser based, what I'm wondering is, can I install an extension? I don't know that this will work, but what happens if I try to install like the live server extension? No, that doesn't work. HTML live servers don't work. Because I'm curious about how would I continue to work on this, right? Like how would I view it? And so maybe it really, for now, I mean, this isn't a bad experience. What I don't know though is, I don't think I can run and debug. No. Live server, live share extension works. Java server pages, maybe it shows it'll install, but it doesn't say. I guess it's hard to say whether that would work or not. I was curious if I'd be able to like bring this up. That would have been pretty cool. Open a remote window. No.
I'm looking at trying to look at the blog post here a little bit. Local development with cloud tools. And it says, you can build client-side applications, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, with the browser tools for debugging.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if there's somebody who's written about how would you use client-side tools. I really don't know. I guess if I thought about it for a little bit. So the image editor apparently works. But like the remote container stuff doesn't work. But like it says here, there are a growing number of extensions updated, more coming every day. So it just feels like this is something that.
Well, hang on. You know what? We're kind of overthinking one thing. So let's just, maybe I've figured this out here, and maybe we were not thinking simply enough. If you edit a web application, if you want to call it that, right? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Remember, it's on your file system, right?
Right.
So if you want to run it, you just go to the file system, and it's an index.html, and just run the page.
Yeah, but that's like a limited experience, right? Without a web server.
It's limited, like you're not running it on a server,
You're not allowed to
but
do
you might be able
JavaScript. You're
to
not allowed to
test
do
out. What's that?
like you're not allowed to do JavaScript, I think, in that case. But it
You're
doesn't
not?
matter. Yeah, they're trying to protect you from somebody accidentally, from not accidentally, somebody maliciously sending you some files that you execute locally. So
Oh, right.
that's what most browsers do
So,
now. But I'm not saying this isn't,
yes, so you need a hosting model
yeah,
for even
right.
for a web application, right? Yeah. Now, I guess you could tie this into your pipeline, right? And make changes and um, push it out to like a server, right? Through some pipeline or something like that. But
Well, I can open a repository,
then,
right? So
yeah, so this is what I expected it to do, right? Like that, I didn't think it was going to work off the file system. I thought like it would be like a first class for GitHub. And it is, right? It's got it really tied into it really nicely.
yep. So it
But
just basically tied into all of my repos, and I can pick one out here. I'm trying to think if I have one that's pretty much purely HTML. I think this one is. And so here comes a vscode.dev session that's got my code for a little app, and there it is, right?
yeah. Yeah, so here's the code. Now, again, if you're taking advantage of, because I'm thinking, well, you could also edit this right in, like, in the web on GitHub, I guess,
I
right? And
could.
just like but I still feel like you're not getting as much of like the file tree, like that you have here on the left.
Yeah.
Like it's more of a developer experience, I think here. But and so wait, how would you check in your changes if you don't? There's no terminal, but again, you are on your computer, so you have a terminal.
Well, so look at it added this bottom because I authorized GitHub. It added this bottom.
Yeah.
Now I can sign into GitHub, right? And I could theoretically allow access to GitHub. And now here it comes. Here comes pull request. I could create a pull request. I can look at
You can do all that
issues.
stuff right there. Yeah.
I could even create an issue
Right.
from here. It looks like so. So it's all here.
It looks like statues here. Hello, statue. How are you?
Yeah, awesome. Good to see you.
Yeah, we got some friends here with us today, which is cool. Always
So
fun.
that's vscode.dev.
Yeah, so maybe this is where we're at today.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
I do think I'll tell you what, the example that still comes back is the Chromebook example, but I'm still not sure how you would serve the website on the Chromebook. So you could get an editing experience. It says you could, I'm reading the blog post. It says you can debug it with the browser tools. So are we just missing something? If anybody has tried this, that's watching this,
Well, let's try it, right? So, well, actually, I'm not sure how I would try it because I pulled that down from the remote repository. I don't even have those files on my system. I was just trying to think here. They give you an example where they say, hey, if you go to here, then you get to see this theme without actually installing it, which is kind of interesting. It allows you to say, hey, I want to take a look at a theme. Maybe I'll like this theme. This is the Night Owl theme, apparently. And if I liked it, I might say like, okay, I'm gonna go install it. But I got to test it out in a browser without actually going and installing it first. Kind of neat.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm like really stuck. I'm like reading this article, which makes for great live content, like I'm reading. But I feel like I hate to
like Dark Elder says used it while working on a client's PC. I could see that. Client doesn't have any tooling installed. So jump in. And Bruno says today I did a PR using only GitHub and VS Code.
Talk about a worst practice, Chris. Do you remember back when we used to go to the server and we'd go into server room, and we'd look at, and we knew we had to fix something because an app was down. So we'd go into the server room in our company. I remember doing this, right, and looking through this, on the drive of the thing, right, and there was like usually you had like all you had on that computer was like a browser or something. You would never have like Visual Studio installed, but you had a browser, and you would make changes to files, and then you would save them, and then you would fix your production app like live on the server, right? Which is about probably the worst thing you could do. But wouldn't that be better now? Today with this, I could open up the file, and have the syntax highlighting and have all the tooling that I want. I wouldn't be able to compile it, so it wouldn't really work for C# or anything like that. But it would work for some things that I could edit. Do you remember doing that, Chris? Going into the servers?
I have done something similar where I opened something up in Notepad and saved it, and depending on what kind of thing it was, maybe saving it made it live. Maybe I had to restart a service. Heck, if you go back far enough, I probably had to restart the server. Yes, I've done stuff like that. I've done stuff like that at Disneyland at 5 a.m. Like, let's just change this file here and hope that all the systems come back.
Yeah. Well, so I think there's more to come with this story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. But interesting.
I think it's interesting direction, I mean, and here's the thing, right? So I don't remember, someone asked earlier, is this just running
like, is it Electron, right?
Is it Electron? Right. So the point is, having this run in the browser isn't such a stretch, really, because it was an Electron app in the first place, right?
Yeah, I believe Visual Studio Code is an Electron app.
Right. And so, I mean,
Code Spaces was not a stretch, right? Yeah.
Right. I wonder how hard it was for them to make this work, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't mean to be putting anyone down. I mean that in a positive way. Like, wow, I wonder if somebody said, hey, I bet I can make this work in the browser. And they hacked around it for a little bit and boom, we got it,
Well, the Visual Studio Code editor, I believe it's correct that it comes from a project called Monaco. And this project is many, many years old, where Visual Studio Team Services, if you remember that, was gonna have a code editor built right in. And I think what happened is that Monaco was open sourced, and so there are many folks, not just Visual Studio Code, who have taken that monitor and run with it. I'm pretty sure that Code Sandbox started based on that monitor editor, and I think there's a couple other sites out there that kind of took that to get things started. I could be wrong about some or the others, but that's just what I recall.
Right. Yeah, who knows? So for those of you, joining us, we're hanging out, we're chatting tonight, we're talking about some things that are interesting to us. We wanted to play around with Vscode.dev, and some other stuff. And if there's some topics people want to talk about, we can jump into some of those. We're trying something a little different on the show tonight, a little more casual. Chris, you got some news for us. You got accepted into an elite program. Am I correct?
Oh, well, I mean, when GitHub Copilot was announced and you could go click on the button to get in line, I got in line, but I had to wait. But now I'm accepted. I actually haven't installed it. So,
have not installed it?
I have not installed Copilot. I wonder if I can install it from this vscode.dev. I'm going to check real quick. We did a show just a couple weeks ago where we tried out, and you cannot install GitHub Copilot into vscode.dev. But we did a show a couple weeks ago where we played with Copilot, and that was a lot of fun.
So while you were speaking, I said, why haven't I joined it yet? And I just went over and it was so easy to sign up for it. I'm kind of embarrassed that I hadn't done it sooner, because we had some fun with that. I think it's a pretty cool.
Yeah. So here's my local machine, right? And I don't need to save any of this stuff. This is fine. I don't even
What
really
is Richard
need...
Wysocki saying? I got it. I think everyone was accepted, and I even told them I rarely use VS Code. Oh, you got one too?
Cool. Awesome.
So you got into, are you saying you got GitHub Copilot? Because you don't need VS, well, I guess you do need VS Code for that.
Yeah, and I just got the email the other day. So
I wonder when Richard Wysocki got his.
Yeah.
So I'm signing up now. Maybe they're starting to open this thing up more. You know what I think? What's really fascinating about this isn't just.
So here it is, right?
I
click install. But go ahead. Let's see. I'm just curious what happens.
I can't see your screen yet. You want to share it to me?
I thought it does show that it's sharing. No?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It's on a different window. Thank you. I think I have it. You know, just the implications of something like GitHub Copilot. You know, if you think about we can do this and it can write code for us now and things like that, which I think are really cool. But you got to it just gives me like, it gives interesting insight into what else is going to be coming soon. Like it has nothing to do with code. Maybe someone else's job that you know, maybe they do something similar and it's just going to help them with things as well, you know, maybe a scientist or who knows, right? Like doctors wanting, you know, I mean, it's different, but it's just AI is what I'm saying. It's AI that reaching over tons and tons of information and providing feedback or suggestions to a consumer. I mean, I think that's what it is in a nutshell, right? Forget about code. You're giving it some prompts. You're giving it some information, like the time when we just put comments into it and said, here's what we want to try, right? And it provided a solution to us. There's a lot of implications for that.
So take a look at here in this little web page. I opened a script tag and look at what it suggested. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, right.
Surprise, surprise. It was like, oh, you want jQuery, right?
Yeah, which you don't, of course, because it's jQuery, but apparently a lot of people do that.
I just think that's cool.
Look at this. Bruno says he read that Copilot is available in more places like Vim.
Oh, interesting.
That's cool.
I didn't know that. So I create like a new...
Ooh, excuse me, I got the hiccups. I'm just curious to see if there's anything on their site that talks about availability.
Look at that. It knew what function I wanted to write. I wanted to write a ready function that basically would wait for DOM content to be loaded. Like I almost have this method memorized. And here it is. Copilot's like, "Oh, you wanted to write that."
How much did you give it? Did you?
I gave it what you see in color. Yeah, what you see in color is what I gave it. And they're like, "Yeah, obviously this is what you want to write." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. It is." So I could come back to body, and I could add a button, and I need to give it some kind of ID, right? So we'll call it a start button. And then I need a paragraph or something. And we'll go text placeholder. It's not giving me too much here. Not giving me too much here. That's fine. No big deal. But if I come back here now, okay, and I say document.get by ID, it's not really the button that I want. I want start button.
But you're in the real VS Code, right?
Yeah. This is VS Code, and it figured out. It says you probably want a click event listener, and I was like, yep. And it said, oh, do you want one that does this? I mean, no, but it's not too far off. So I might as well just accept it because I can just say like, yeah, you know, sure, this is good.
So, sorry, did you try this in the browser?
No, I did. So GitHub Copilot, the extension, it was listed, like they said in their little directory, not available in vscode.dev.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What did I call it? Did I call it text placeholder? I'm just curious how much of it can give me. Oh, I put a capital H here, capital. And then I could say like just something really dumb. Yeah, inner HTML. You were right. You were right, Copilot. Oh, and we still need to close that off. But yeah, that's like a working application. I usually keep live server ready, so I can bring that up and it all works. And what was really cool to me was that like I write this method all the time, this ready method, and it was like, yep. And I didn't have to remember the details about add event listener. They said, yep, yeah, I got that for you.
And we talked about this last time, but I want to just bring this up again because some people say, well, this is like, I don't know. I've heard some interesting commentary. Like some people think, well, this is like cheating and stuff. Well, if you didn't remember that code, how were you going to find that code?
You're going to go Google
Chris?
it?
Google it.
Yeah.
Right. You were just going to go Google it anyway. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not adding any, like, it's not like superior brains here. It's just really making life easy for us. Right.
I knew it was going to be like, look up the style sheet code for me. The moment I type link, it says, yeah.
And it's Bootstrap.
Yeah. Sure. It's like, you want Bootstrap, right? I mean, who doesn't? who wouldn't have wanted Bootstrap?
Yeah, and Bruno's right. I mean, it's like Stack Overflow straight into the IDE, right? It's like Stack or Git, or just basic Google search or whatever. But yeah, exactly. That's kind of how we described it the last time. I think it's, it's about reducing friction, about reducing keystrokes for us. It's not, and we could say, well, it's not like taking over yet, but it's helping, right? This is helpful. This is saving time for a developer.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it the other time, trying to see how far we could push it. Like, what were the boundaries? But
yeah, you did that on a previous show. We did those puzzles, right?
Yep.
And then we said, well, I wonder if it can solve one of those puzzles for us or something like that. And I think we had some mixed success with that, right? But that's okay.
You know, a topic I want to give a try sometime soon is, I have recently come across some folks who they've on Twitch, they've been streaming. I know this might sound kind of weird. They've been streaming their C++ homework. So basically they just fire up the stream and they start working on the problem. And then of course people come in, and what's hilarious, it's hilarious how like you get 3 or 4 people in the chat and they all want to do things a different way. But it got me thinking a little bit about, so this is a CS 101 class, and all of us here on the show right now might argue over, why is CS 101 starting them in C++? Like, oh my gosh, aren't there better choices in 2021? Maybe for a first language. But I'm not, that's a whole topic there, which is definitely interesting. What I got to thinking about is, what is the best way to help this person without just simply doing it for them, but like so that they can learn, and that they can get better. Because if you've never done it before, it seems foreign. Even what we're doing now tonight, for a lot of the folks watching this show, they may have typed out this HTML skeleton so many times that you can do it in your sleep. It's a piece of cake. I will admit that I've kind of taken to not remembering this skeleton by heart, so I let Visual Studio Code help me by putting in an exclamation mark and hitting tab. That's kind of where I've come to now. I just say, you do it for me. But I wonder what some people's suggestions would be. How most programming books might begin nowadays. They might say, okay, let's learn about variables, and then let's learn about your, whether or not the programming language has main functions or the concept of a main function. Just let's start writing some code, and let's do some if statements and some loops with while and for and control flow. It's interesting to go back to those concepts after a lot of years and think about, how did you learn it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting to think about, like, how did you learn it, right? And well, I had a conversation with somebody, I guess, was it this week already? I can't remember if it was this week or last week already. It's a little bit of a blur. On a similar topic here, asking me about courses I might recommend uh, at a college that they were going to. They were starting to take some computer courses, and you're saying, like, how do you learn it, and not even just how do you learn it, but it's got me thinking, like, well, what do you want to learn? Um, I thought it was interesting because this the school was pushing sort of like operating system classes, even for like a development curriculum, like still seemed like a little old school, like pushing like that operating system curriculum.
Like write your own OS or something, kind of. Right, the compiler.
Or about like understanding how the OS works,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how, some networking stuff. Now, I thought the networking stuff was kind of um, an interesting aspect of a curriculum. And maybe I'm going off topic from what you were saying, but that was one where I said, geez, I don't know if I would have suggested to take a networking course, but I tell you what, I think it would come in handy. Like, I wish I had a good networking course in my background, like,
Sure. Yeah.
surprising what you need to know as developers. And I think that there's some stuff there that could come in handy, but there's also some stuff there that might be a little too much. But I always think, like, JavaScript's such a good place to start, right? If you want to learn those constructs, that's what you were talking about, right? Basic constructs.
Um, I I often suggest it for its accessibility, and what I
Right.
mean by that, and it's a lot of the things we've talked about tonight and shown tonight, is that someone who just says to me, "Hey, I kind of want to learn to code, but I'm not going to make a huge investment. I'm not going to buy a machine specifically for it. I don't really want to invest in any software right now. Just, can I get started?" And the answer is still, well, yeah, you can, because there's free tooling that I can point you at. VS Code's one example if you've got your Mac or you've got your PC. And if you don't even have those things, you want to do stuff in a browser, there's certain sites that can help you. Do I think it's the most straightforward language? I think there are better choices for that if that's what you're looking for. Something that's a little bit more straightforward and doesn't have as many gotchas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but at the same time, there's a little bit more investment there. It's getting better, but for example, I know of some websites where if I wanted to start working on Python, I could get going. Like Repl will bring up a Python VM. I could do it with code spaces, but there's even a little bit of friction just for that. So I'm talking, somebody says to me, like, I am brand new. I am ground beginning, just learning. And it's sure you can start by creating a little website because there's no friction to that. Like, it's super easy and you can get results fast. So,
Yeah, but bringing up like a REPL, like, that is a pretty good way. Like, you could have a C# REPL and not have to worry about compiling and things like that, and still work in a language like that.
yeah.
Um,
It's interesting that you say that about a C# REPL, and maybe we'll look at that. Because we got some great comments that I want to come back to. Earlier, when we were talking about Copilot and we were talking about its value as something that helps you, I think that we all have to make the judgment call. Is how is this getting analyzed? And there is actually, I'm pretty sure, although I don't know where it is, and so I shouldn't try to pretend like I know for sure here. I think there's some discussion about what happens to the code you write. And how is it? I don't think it's necessarily sent to Microsoft / Google, because I think it's the other way around. Is the engine is local, and it's somehow, I don't know how it works, but I think it pulls from its suggestion engine that's trained on specific code. But I don't know. But that is covered on the GitHub Copilot site. That doesn't mean that I think that, like, Dark Elder should say, like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. I'm not saying that. You have to make the choice that's appropriate for what you're doing. And that might be the right choice, is to say, look, what I'm working on, it's not something that I need to have hanging around. So,
right.
But yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm looking in the chat here a little bit too. Um,
You mentioned a .NET REPL.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's an experiment out there that I know of that I've never even looked at. I wonder if it's easy to do. Oh, look at this. So let me go ahead and bring this up. I am pretty sure that Scott Hanselman highlighted this because let's see. I think I have it up in Skype, right? So now all I got to do is switch over.
But yeah.
So this project, I've been considering taking a look at.
People saying hi, stopping by, hanging out. Ancient Coder, we're hanging out tonight on a kind of low-key show. Kind of, I don't know, I don't want to overstate it, but we're kind of bouncing around on some topics here and just having some fun and talking about different things, right?
Yep.
But I think it's going pretty well, thank you, Ancient Coder. How's it going for you? I hope you're doing well. We are about to look at .NET REPL.
Yeah.
Chris, sorry I interrupted.
No, it's fine. So F# has a REPL. It's available in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. A lot of C# developers might not be too familiar with the concept. Python developers usually are, and other languages too. Like when I was playing around with Elixir, it has a REPL. So what does it stand for? First of all, like REPL, if you're, a lot of people here may or may not know, it stands for read. I think I'm right about this. It stands for read, evaluate, print loop, right? Which is basically you write some code, it evaluates it, it prints out the result, and then you start over. So instead of you writing the code, building it, and running it, here you write a line of code and that instantly gets evaluated and the state of the machine is updated, I don't want to say permanently, but for your session so that you can just keep working. It's a concept that predated but is similar to notebooks when we did notebooks a few weeks ago, and you saw that I would run code in a cell and that seemed to like update the world, and then I would go run code in another cell. But this not only does it predate that, it predates any programming I ever did. REPLs are not a new concept. They predate me. But what's interesting is .NET has never really had like a console-based REPL. So what's interesting about this project is it looks pretty easy to install. I've never done this. .NET Tool, so it's using the .NET Tool infrastructure where you can write tools that run, kind of like how Node and NPM, you can install global tools. This is kind of that infrastructure for .NET. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up a terminal here for us to use. I've got to clear that prompt there. And then let's take a look. So again, here we are. Again, we're just trying some stuff out here. I think I was doing some work in this folder, so let's go in here. As you can see, I tend to be a command prompt person, but I am in Windows Terminal, so I want to copy this, and then I will paste it, and then we'll make that full screen so that we can watch. Let's see what happens.
So you haven't tried this before? We did it here live.
I've never tried this. So you can invoke the tool using this command, okay? .NET REPL. And look at that. Looks like a little prompt here that says C#. Let me make sure. It looks like it's kind of running off the screen a little bit. So I'm going to live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just a little bit. I am going to live just try to fix that.
Oh, you're talking about on your shit. Oh, okay.
On the
Mine's
stream.
Not doing it. Yeah, on the stream. Maybe just a character or two, right?
Yeah, it's not much. That's okay.
Don't worry about it. If we can see what's going on here.
Okay. So if I've got a C#, command line, I imagine one of the first things we can do, right, is good old console write line. Okay. All right. That seemed pretty straightforward. What if I said Okay. So I tried to do that without a colon and see how it complained and said, "Oh no, you need one of those." So let's try that again.
Up arrow?
Up arrow didn't work actually.
Interesting.
I'm not trying to say that I know if it should or shouldn't. What if I type help? No? Okay. So what if I type name? So this is pretty common in REPLs, is you type a variable and it just displays it. That's not super unusual, I think. And then I guess I could go from here and do some interesting things, like say, well, I don't know that they're totally interesting, but don't ask me why I separated it. And then of course I have this. So that's cool. This all works. I wonder what else you can do with it though.
What if you, Chris? What if you wanted to use something from a namespace?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, right? Like link type stuff.
Well, that's a good. Sure, you could start with that. I mean, there's a lot of that's as good a place as any to start, right?
Yeah.
Would you have to type like using system.link, or would you, or because you can't start out with using system.link because you didn't start out with it. Like you're further down. Like since you're in a program here, even though it's not really. Like, how do you get back to the beginning?
Well,
so let's see what happens.
I'm not sure this is going to work. That's the thing. Let's see. Okay. Using the generic type list requires one type argument. That's probably...
Well, you didn't do it right because you said new list. You didn't say list event.
You're right.
So it almost seems like, well, yeah, I see what you're saying. You're still just creating a generic list. So system.generics is there, though, right?
It looks like it was built in. Or at least, I don't want to say built in, but it kind of looks like it was...
defaulted, maybe.
Yeah. Because so what I agree with you. What I'm looking for is something that's not built in, right? Something that's not there for us already. So like if I said, I don't know that this helps me. I say var doubled equals numbers, and then we'll say for each number, let's double it. Then I do doubled. See, all that stuff is working. So I'm presuming that there must be some standard includes, and maybe the site tells us.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the site, but I don't think I'm looking at the same REPL you're looking at. I'm looking at something called Replit.
Replit is a different product that I actually kind of like, but .NET-REPL. So, I should have included this in our chat tonight, right? Which I can do. So,
this is the one off of Hanselman's blog that you were talking about. Yeah, here it is, .NET REPL on GitHub. So let's see if they talk about
add NuGet packages, which of course I was definitely interested in.
There's also magic commands, and I think I remember something about magic commands from another conversation we had in the past.
Yeah, .NET
Interactive has those magic commands, right?
Oh, so control up and control down let you go up and down. What you were asking for. I was curious about what you said. How do you know what's already included? I suppose eventually you run into something that's not. But how do you find out to begin with?
It's not in the docs that I can find it.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's interesting.
But it has a lot of the same features as .NET Interactive. I can switch to another kernel. Cool. Yeah. I can share variables between kernels. So, show version information, run the code with C#, stores a value with other kernels, run using the SQL kernel. So, but yeah, I hadn't tried this. It's interesting that it works pretty quickly. You know, I think I'd always kind of wanted .NET languages to be a little more scriptable.
Hmm.
And in the past, we did have some projects. Like there was a script CS project, and maybe it still exists. Um, I feel like I don't know, but I remember I think we even had somebody who maintained script CS out at Philly.net once. Um,
Huh. Yes.
LinkPad
Yeah.
kind of gives you a sort of scriptability, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right.
You can just open
You know,
LinkPad and fire away.
you got my brain going on. Like you mentioned that thing earlier about like learning the basics and iterations, and I think you were talking about like control of an application, like those kind of basics. I was thinking like, what would you, if someone, I'm trying to like come up with an odd scenario, but if someone just showed up at work and your boss said, this person's not a developer, but I want you to teach them to code. Okay, right? And so they're not going to go to an official course. So you would start off with, you know, probably like creating a variable and doing this kind of stuff you're doing now. Maybe like, some arrays. You start with all the basics, right? I would think, right? Arrays and constructs and things like that. Maybe classes and stuff. But classes, and that got me thinking about object-oriented programming. And C# is an object-oriented language. But it started me thinking, like, how quickly would I start teaching someone about the object-oriented aspects? And, like, how much can you get away without knowing that? Does that make any sense? Like, I feel like you don't need to know. You do need to know. I don't want to say you don't need to know. You do as a developer. You need to know this stuff, right? But you could probably get along pretty well without understanding it for a while until you ran into something that just didn't work, right?
I think that a lot of people. So let me go back in the past and remember my own journey. I when C++ was kind of bursting onto the scene, I knew languages like C and Pascal, and I really struggled with C++. I had a very hard time understanding classes and objects. And part of the reason, I think, is because I'd spent so much time in Pascal and C, where you just sort of wrote the functions you needed, right? So this whole idea of having this data structure, which I might think of as a struct or a type, but that I had these functions that I could call on it that operated on those, so instances, all those things. I really struggled with that. But what actually helped me was I started learning MFC. Remember MFC? It was kind of like the WinForms of the old days.
Yes.
And so you might ask the question, how could you possibly have been successful with MFC without understanding object-oriented programming? Well, the reason why I could make it work is that they'd written the object hierarchy. I needed to kind of fill in the blanks by saying button.text equals press this button. Now,
exactly.
That actually helped C++ click. The classes and the inheritance and objects, it started to click because now I'm using it, and I'm using it for something that gives you something like and I'm talking about MFC, but let's go ahead and zoom forward and talk about WinForms. I think the reason why WinForms was so successful and other libraries like it is because they give you this like object hierarchy that has buttons and list boxes and progress bars and all this stuff, and they've already filled in the blanks. All you got to do is fill in the properties, and then maybe you don't know how to wire things up, so you let the IDE wire up what we used to call a code behind. But then eventually you figure out how to wire them up yourself. You go, oh, look, I see what it's doing. It's subscribing to it. You may not even know that. You may not even use that word. But eventually somebody kind of clues you in and says, oh, that's subscribing to the event. Oh, okay. All right. So I actually found that that for me, object-oriented programming began to click when I started using it in a desktop framework, which at the time happened to be MFC, but it could have been WinForms. It could have been the Qt framework for cross-platform. It could have been, I can't remember, Java applets. Something's telling me that was called Swing, that framework, but I don't know that I have that right. I feel like that's what made it click. Instead of continuing to read the bank account example in this C++ book and the bank account example in that C++ book, it wasn't clicking.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about some of this stuff, and I popped into one. I just was Googling, like the standard 3 object-oriented things. You got encapsulation, abstraction, and inheritance. Are those the 3 of them? I don't even know.
The 3 pillars. Yeah, I've got a C++ book somewhere that talks about.
Yeah, and I was thinking, do you need? And I think I'm sort of wrong. You do need. I was thinking, how far could you go without knowing about some of these things? Because I think to myself, I don't use inheritance a lot, but I probably do use it. I just don't even. I do use it. There's always a base class for something, right? There's basics, right? Then I was thinking encapsulation, but certainly abstraction is something that all the time I use. So I guess maybe I'm just thinking it wasn't important because it's so ingrained into me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
that you think it doesn't matter because you don't think you use it. And then when you stop, you go, wow, gosh, I use that stuff all the time, way more than I thought.
I remember my early C++ book said things like, hey, the pillars of object-oriented programming, encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance. Mm-hmm. And there are definitely a lot of people out there who avoid inheritance. And there are even people out there who I think are avoiding encapsulation. They're saying, hey, I'll still use the language, but I'm going to separate my data types from maybe not always, but sometimes I will separate my data types from the stuff that does work. The classes that do work take the data types and they do something with them, and they, especially I think functional programmers, but then again, now we're not in object-oriented programming, right? So
that's not just encapsulation. Isn't just having a person that knows how to add itself to the database. I don't know if I'd call that encapsulation.
No, encapsulation, the classic idea is that I can hide the internals of the class from you, and so that you just use the operations on the class and that's it.
Correct. Right. I thought you were saying something else. No, I mean, yeah.
But when you said abstraction, so abstraction is a core concept of computer science that it's, I think I've talked about this before. Somebody that I really respect is Hal Abelson, who was one of the authors of Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs, and he has one of my favorite quotes that goes something like, code is written for humans to read and only incidentally for machines to execute. And he is famous, I think it's famous, for teaching a course that MIT put out there. It's like their What is Computer Science course from who knows when. And it's funny because you can tell that it's on videotape, quite frankly. At least I always could. I was like, oh, this is from videotape. And one of the things that he opens up with in his course, he says, hey, we're here to talk about computer science, which is neither really about computers and not really actually a science. And he says the core thing about computer science is abstraction. And he goes to that over and over and over again. We build an abstraction so that we can reason about higher level things, or maybe the way you want to look at it, lower level things. It depends on which way you want the pyramid to point, right? But yeah, I have to find that lecture because it really is one of my favorite lectures that I've ever watched.
I mean, is abstraction really that different from, like, when we talk about abstraction in, I'll use the term computer science, even though you said it's not really a science or whatever, right? But we use abstraction, right? But is that much different than abstraction? You could say is just tooling, right? Like, I have a faucet in my kitchen, but isn't that just an abstraction over going out and digging a hole in the backyard
Sure.
and putting in a well? And
Sure.
like,
yeah. You're operating at turn the handle and water comes out. And if you turn the handle on the left, warm water comes out. And you build on top of that so that you don't have to do the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to some degree, it's sort of an abstraction. I mean, maybe it's a stretch, but.
No, it is. And it's funny that you brought up a faucet. I think that's another blog post about, like, how far do you dig below the abstraction? For example, if somebody lost a ring down the drain, do you just consider it's gone, or do you go ahead and go a level down and open up that little, how what is it called? The S trap?
The trap, right. Yeah. Exactly, the trap. Yeah.
And I wouldn't know how to do that. I guess I could figure it out if somebody lost a very important something down there.
You've never opened up one of those traps?
Oh, heck no. I never. Oh my gosh. Never. Come on, man. Now, if I really had to, I'd probably hit YouTube and find out how to do it. But no, I've never.
Honestly, this is really easy. They're made to twist open nowadays, like with these big PVC, rings around them and stuff like that. So they're pretty easy to do.
No, never. Never done it.
Wow, I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's true story, man. So
man. That's interesting.
So this is what I was looking for.
I don't think you're sharing that out to the. There you go. Yeah.
It's funny because it's definitely.
Look at this video.
Yeah, the lecture 1 of Overview and Introduction to Lisp, and the instructor is Harold Abelson, who wrote Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs, which is a classic. And I do not sleep on this lecture. I mean, it's an hour, but he's going to say it right here. Here we are to talk about computer science, and I know we're not listening to the audio, but he says in a second, computer science is a terrible name for this business, and he's going to cross it out. Say it's not really a science, and it's not actually really about computers, because his argument is that it's the abstractions we create and the code we write are for humans. It's just incidental that computers execute them. That's his opinion. I love this lecture, and I've got to get the link into the chat, of course.
Yeah, put the link into the chat. So all right, I know I'm bouncing here a little bit, but you got me thinking about something else when you say computer science and there's no science, right? It got me thinking about a conversation I was having today about titles and the concept of a developer versus an engineer.
Yeah.
What's in it? Like, are we engineers? Like, I don't know. And what makes someone a programmer versus a developer versus an engineer? Do you give any thought to that? Like, partly I don't care.
So I eventually come down on I don't care, and there's a reason why. Because people can get into some very passionate arguments over what ends up not really mattering that much, right? Like we're all still going to go to work tomorrow, and we're all still going to get paid to try to figure this discipline out. But if you want, if the idea is that, hey, I asked you to take a stand, I may have that title depending on where I work, and I do not consider myself an engineer. And the reason why is because there's a superficial reason, and then what I think is a more in-depth reason. The superficial reason is I did not take any board exams to prove that I was at a certain competency to do my job, such as a doctor or a dentist would, or a civil engineer would, or an even an electrician would, to prove to an authority using a set of standards that I meet those standards. Do you think that we in this discipline could even come up with that test without arguing? I mean, I don't think so. I think we would scream at each other over what that standard test would look like to say you're an engineer. So that's my superficial reason. My more in-depth reason.
I feel like engineer is a bit over.
Yeah.
over the top. I mean, I've been an engineer at certain companies. That's what they called me. And, some people feel like that's a very respectful name for a software developer. Oh, an engineer is someone that really knows their, I don't even know. Like, you know,
I don't care if that's the title. If I work
yeah,
somewhere,
I tend to think that like, right. Someone that studied engineering,
right.
It's like a different kind of thing. I feel like we've kind of corrupted that word a little bit.
Yeah. But I have a second reason, right?
Is like called programmers. They say, no, I'm a developer. I'm not a programmer. I'm like, is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, I don't care if you call me a programmer. I don't care. Yeah, right. Like to me, it's not an insult. To me.
Right.
If I am a civil engineer and I am tasked with designing a freeway, I don't know much about designing freeways, but I do know that a civil engineer, without a doubt, has the training to both design and build the thing so it doesn't fall over. And here I am, having done this for a very long time, and I build a lot of things that fall over. And it's not intentional. It's because there's an imprecision to what we do.
Well, let's be clear about that. I don't want to be I'm not putting you down, Chris, when I say this, but there might be an imprecision to what you do, and there might be an imprecision to what I do.
Yeah.
Right. But software developers put land rockets on planets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they're engineers then? Is that what you're saying? Like,
I think that was a feat of engineering.
They don't make mistakes. They don't make mistakes in their code, right?
I think that was a feat of engineering. And I certainly think that we have, at least in business or enterprise or what a lot of us do every day, and I'm not trying to put down what we do, is software has certainly eaten the world, and places have to write software that never would have dreamed of it. Like a bank. You're a bank. You got to write software, right? But there is an engineer. You're right. There was engineering to that code, but I also feel like it was more rigorous, and I actually don't know if I understand how that was written to be bug free, because I'm going to use the we, not derogatorily, but we aren't very good at writing correct code. I think it's easy to make mistakes and go like, oh yeah, even on the most trivial stuff.
Well, it is easy. So I came to computers a little later than some people my age, but I remember friends of mine telling me how they would write programs, in college or first job or whatever it was. They'd write a program, and then they'd compile it, and a half hour later they might find out they made a mistake, and you didn't want to spend a half hour to find that mistake, so you were really careful about writing that code. I think that's the impression I get. Whereas we take it as throwaway. They're just character. I'm compiling on the fly, and it takes me 2 seconds to compile if I want to hit a button to do it. And maybe that's the start. Maybe that's the start of us like not needing to care as much. It's a little bit more of a carefree operation. Like we don't double check every line of code. I mean, we should. And for anyone that's listening, that might do business with the company I work, we have tests, and we do test our code, right? And it is good code, right? But are we that careful at it, like every step along the way? Maybe we're pushing quality down. And when I say we, I mean our industry. Like we've pushed quality. We say shift left, right? That's a phrase we talk about a lot, right? But for too long, maybe we've shifted right on quality. What do you think about that? Is there something? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I guess that, and I really do like this comment here, because I think beyond here lies nothing says, I think this is a misconception about engineering. There are lots of different kinds of engineers, and engineering and the rigor matches the risks. I think, if I could just clarify, is that I do not consider it an insult that I don't think of myself as an engineer. I don't think that's insulting because
Mhm.
I think the discipline of software development is hard. And I think it's one of the hardest things that people do is to create something out of thin air. Um, we do sort of just create it out of just some typing, and then especially what we're able to do through software to kind of instantiate hardware now, right? Like, can't I do that with software? I can provision hardware with software, and I don't even care how it works. So it's like this air castle that I'm creating. I think that's very powerful, but the reason why I think of it as engineering is because of so much of the discipline can be trial and error, which to the point of I know we take the moon example or moonshot as an example. There's plenty of footage of rockets not doing so well in the early days, right? They
Right,
learned
but
from
that's the
that
same
though.
trial and error.
They were
That's
learning
the
from
same
that. Yeah,
trial and
sure.
error that we do
Right. Sure.
on a micro scale. We do it on a micro scale. That's like a macro kind of thing, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the first time they built a bridge, it fell down, right? I mean, this is what, Beyond Here Lies Nothing, I think, is getting at. Like, they had to practice it. They had to figure out how to do it, and then they knew how to do it, right? I don't know. My comment was maybe a little bit, I don't know. Maybe I was just
Whoops. I
throwing it
didn't
out
mean
there,
to.
but like the
I
whole
didn't mean to.
concept of an engineer versus a developer is like, I think what we really all agree, and Dark Elder said it, is like, the titles don't matter that
Oh yeah.
much,
I don't.
and
I
you
don't
never
worry
know
about
what
that.
one company calls something. I'm sometimes embarrassed by my title. Not embarrassed, maybe that's not the right word, but I feel like it sounds more important than it is. But I'm an AVP, right?
Okay.
A vice president or assistant vice president. I don't know. I don't assist anybody, so I mean, I guess I do, but I'm not like someone's assistant. I don't know why they call it an AVP, but I work in the financial industry. That's just what they call a person at a certain point. But it sounds like, wow, an AVP. Like, I don't know. It just feels like it has this higher level thing. And guess what? If I worked at another company, I might be called a director. I might be called a manager.
Yeah.
It's a difference.
Right. An engineering lead, maybe. Um,
Sure. Well, any number of titles,
director
right?
of director of development, director of IT. Who knows, right? I mean, and so I guess, like I said, is I think one thing that kind of slipped away was I said, if you really, really are going to make me take a stand, then I will say that I don't consider myself that the engineer by the dictionary definition. But there's no doubt that what we do can be a feat of engineering. I
Right.
just
A
don't know
feat of
that.
it.
I don't know that all of it is.
So I'm kind
Um,
of curious if we'll get any response here, but if people that are playing along here on the chat, I'm curious to know if they consider themselves, if someone says to you, what do you do for a living? What
you
do you
know,
say?
oh
Doesn't
yeah,
matter what
that's a
your
good
title is.
question. You
What
know,
do you say? You go, oh, I'm a programmer, I'm
I
a
usually
developer.
say I write software. I
Right,
I,
I write software.
I
That's another
do
one.
say that.
Like, I don't, especially these days, I don't even write software, right? Manage teams that build software. But if someone walks up to me and says, hey, what do you do for a living? I got to tell you, my answer is I'm a software developer. Like,
Yeah,
I'm program write code, but that's sort of what I still identify as.
yeah.
Uh,
Oftentimes I will then be asked, well, what kind of software? And
oh yeah,
because I have spent quite a while in the same discipline, well, maybe not the same discipline, in kind of the same sort of arena now, I will say, oh, well, I've worked for some different enterprises in the healthcare space, which is true. Um, but what's interesting is that I used to actively try to avoid getting pegged into like, oh, so you've spent a lot of time like in finance. It's like, no, not really. I actually before this I was building an app that was running on a kiosk at Disneyland. Like, that's entertainment. Is that entertainment software? I don't know. I don't know, how do I classify that? Uh, so I I'm just telling you what I say, and I don't take offense to anyone using different terminology. It's fine. I think
okay,
that
yeah,
it's just
yeah. Beyond Here Lies Nothing says
Yeah.
software engineer.
Yeah.
The title.
Which is
And,
totally
and yeah,
fine. Yeah.
totally fine.
I,
I've had people say, "Oh, Andy, you're a software engineer." If they say that, I go, "Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's what I do." You know, like it's fine.
and being part of
Sort of.
that, being part of that arena, when Beyond Here Lies Nothing says that, I know what that means. And I think that's great. And I think it's awesome to meet someone else doing the same thing. I don't know if, certainly there's all kinds of software, embedded or cloud or real time or on a device. I don't know, but that's not important. We understand. We probably understand some of those same frustrations of the bug that you just can't figure out until it finally dawns on you. Because that's kind of something that I think we all share. Those experiences of I don't know what it's like to be a programmer, a developer, an engineer. So
You're talking about the pain.
like I think we've when you've done this enough, we've all had all of these things. The tough bug that when you finally figured it out felt like a big triumph, or the problem that you thought, like I had this case where I just said, I don't know how I'm ever going to figure this out. And then it just sort of dawns on you like the sun rising. And it just feels really nice when you go, I think this is it. I think this is going to work.
How often? No, I would say not only I think it's going to work, but I have times, and it's usually away from work,
Yeah.
away from a computer, walking down the road or going out to the car. And not only do I think it's going to work, I just know it. You just go, that's the solution. Now, to me, those are the great moments, right? But for every one of those, how often do you have something that you spend a lot of time on? And, and I always tell people when we're, someone asks for help and I'm trying to help them and we can't find the solution. I say, you know what? It's going to be I hate to use the word dumb because
Yeah.
I don't want
Right.
people were dumb and he was dumb or I was dumb. But how often does it turn out to be something like,
Yep.
really? That's what and it was some seemingly simple mistake that we made.
And you get that sense about it too. I've used that same term, but I've said it to myself where I say, this is going to end up being something dumb, which is just a shorthand way of like, when I finally discover this, I'm going to kick myself that, oh, you missed this. You didn't read that close enough. You didn't remember to do A before B.
Right.
Which one of those little things is it? But I know that's what it's going to be.
Right.
But I don't think of it as an insult. I just think of it as like, well, that's part of it too.
That's part of the job. And so that's a good lesson. And we've talked about this on the show, right? That's that lesson for beginner developers. Like, don't be embarrassed about you think, oh, well, you would have found that mistake easily. Well, no, I've struggled through those things myself. And how many times have I told people, make sure you do X, Y, Z, make sure you do X, Y, Z, make sure you do X, Y, Z. And then one day I got that bug. And why? Because I didn't do X, Y, Z. We all get there, But I like the way Dark Elder puts it, pain, everything is your fault. No thank you from the CEO, long hours. He's talking about, Dark Elder's talking about, the life of a software developer, programmer, engineer, whatever you call yourself. Some good times. And then Dark Elder, they say, wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah.
And that's, I wouldn't change it for the world either.
I like
right.
that. I like that as a really good punctuation mark, is that even though we've just spent a little time kind of digging into this and that and problems and whatever, in the end, I have to agree, I probably wouldn't change it for the world, right? What I've chosen to do as a career. I really do enjoy it. So
I just want to touch upon something Beyond Here Lies Nothing said, sometimes we were talking about, I guess, what we call silly mistakes, and it's a mistake you've made previously. You know, that's what be on here like. You hate when it's a mistake you made previously. And how many times have you been in that scenario where you're stuck on something and you know emphatically, you're like, I've made this mistake before and it took me like hours to figure it out once before. And why can't I remember what it was that did it? I know not only have I had this problem before, I've solved this problem before, and I still can't. And then when you finally get to it, you're like, that's what it was. Oh, how could I forget that? That kills me, you know?
Yeah.
But hey, where are we, right? Where are we now? I mean, in the show, you want to talk, start looking at, I see you're on my screen, you're bringing up Meetup. Actually not.
Well, next week, right? Next week, I think our friends at Philly.net have a talk, and I'm gonna get this up here. Let me just go ahead and get this published real quick. Oh, what do you mean?
There's no description. You have to have a description.
Oh, you're right. You
don't even have an image.
I'm gonna have to go in and update this. So.
Oh, is that gonna happen? Oh, is it post? I didn't know that it's gonna be next week.
So there is a different one next week, and that's let me get this in here. Okay, so.
No, I know where you're going with this. I'm just saying I didn't know that was the case. I think.
Am I right about that? Today's the 27th. So here we go. Let me get my screen shared here for everybody's benefit.
He's multitasking here, so we'll all see in a minute.
So next week, for folks that there's a lot of folks who watch the show that know that we're from the Philly.net area, the Philly area, and have been a part of the Philly.net user group, which used to meet in the Malvern area, but has been meeting online recently. And next week, at November 3rd at 7 p.m., there's going to be this little talk about .NET Interactive Workbooks. We might recognize the speaker. I don't know. Maybe I need to... I don't know. I don't know if anybody recognizes the speaker there. So if you are interested in joining, what you'll want to do is you'll want to find Philly.net on meetup.com. Philly.net is using Microsoft Teams for these meetups, and you actually have to be added to the list. So the best way to do that, frankly, is to find the event and then add a comment saying, please add me. Unfortunately, there's no self-sign-up that I know of anyways. So, but still, there's quite a few people who have gotten themselves added to the tenant for Philly.net. So I'm looking forward to talking about .NET Interactive Workbooks, which we talked about here on this show just a short time ago, maybe a month, and you can find that on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedevtalkshow, and you could check out that episode on .NET Interactive. I'm going to be repeating that there. And I think what we're going to do is the Dev Talk Show is going to start a little early, coming out of Philly.net. We'll be live. Philly.net may end at 8, 8:05, 8:10, but we will get started a little early and lead out. I don't know.
Yeah.
For
some background for people, you know, we've talked about this a lot of times on the show, but like the whole, sort of reason for this show that we have, right, was that we always loved when we went to user group meetings and we'd all go out and afterwards we'd talk, we'd continue the conversation from a great user group session, like the one Chris is going to give, right? A great presentation, but people want to talk about it afterwards. So that was kind of how we got started with this. We met in Malvern. We would just walk into the studio right after the Philly.net meetings, and we would go live, and we would talk about things and have guests and have people talk about it. And we want people to have that opportunity, to sort of keep that conversation going. So it sort of makes sense, even though not everyone in that watches the show might be interested in Philly.net or whatever. But we're trying to like sort of keep that sort of like that bridge going between the two groups, and have fun with it that way. So so like if there's a user group meeting, we're going to try to start earlier so that people can sort of jump right into it, and we can do then what we would do. We can do a follow up, right, Chris? So like in our show, People can bring questions from the presentation if they maybe didn't get them answered or looking for more detail. You'd be willing to keep going. Maybe not even deeper. You might not have more content per se.
Right.
But certainly scenarios, questions, alternatives, right?
Yep. And I think that can be useful. But, and again, like we always do, thanks to the folks that join us and bring up their own, they bring their ideas and they tell us about their own experiences. We usually have plenty to talk about because we got some great, I think just a lot of great comments from folks who offered, some of their own experience tonight, which is really appreciated. The week after that, or a couple weeks after that, Philly.net is going to do a .NET Maui talk. Rob is, so it might be interesting to follow that up, and I wonder if we would maybe build an app or something. But anyways,
yeah,
here we are. We've
I'm about there.
Yeah, I think we had a good show, and again, next week, if you're here at 8:30, you'll see us on. But if you are looking to if you do get here and you want to be here when the show starts, I would guess we're going to lead out of Philly.net, and that could be 5 after 8, something like that. But you'll see us go live on Twitch and on YouTube. So again, thanks to everyone who joined us. We hope you enjoyed it. We had a little bit more of a chat tonight. And some nights, if you go back into our archive, you'll see us dive into code, like last week with the kind of the event-based app. And this week we talked a little bit, and that's what I like. I like how it's always something different, but always something live. That's what's fun. All right, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for helping us. Like you did your part today again, running the stream. I haven't done that in a while, so one of these days I'm gonna have the engines here running on my side and broadcasting, so to speak, live from my house. But tonight we're live from your house here.
Yeah,
and hopefully Rich will be back with us.
Yep.
Next week. You want to take us out?
Yeah. So hopefully. Like I said, Rich wasn't here tonight, but for my co-hosts, Rich Ross and Andy Schwam, I'm Chris Gomez, and I want to thank all of you for joining us on the Dev Talk Show.